Hello, everyone. My name is Hital Dave. I work at Wandel in the e-commerce team as an architect. I have been working with e-commerce projects for as long as I can remember, and I intend to share the knowledge that I have acquired over the years with regards to e-commerce, just general understanding. So, as I described, I am planning to cover the concepts of e-shopping, how uh, how e-shopping is different from brick and mortar store. So let's compare. What happens when you typically go to store for shopping? You enter the mall, you look for the items that you want to purchase. You put them in your cart or basket if you are carrying one. You come to the counter for the checkout and you pay for the merchandise either with cash or your credit card or sometimes even a check. Then you collect your bags and you walk out the store with the goods that you have purchased. Simple. Now let's think of this experience with regards to online shopping. So what happens? So entering to the store will kind of compare to you typing a URL like amazon.com or macy's.com, going to the store and starting to click around to find the products that you are looking to purchase, which is typically referred to as browsing. And what you are browsing is a catalog. You find the items that you are looking for, and then there is a button that says add to cart. So you add that item to cart, and then it gets interesting. Compared to you coming to the counter and paying and walking out with your goods, that process is little different in online shopping. You have to provide your shipping address, you have to provide your billing address, you have to provide your payment information, whether it's a credit card or you are paying through PayPal or through your bank checking account. Then you get to review it all, that with whether your address, all the addresses or the shipping information, the billing information, and the payment information that you have provided is accurate. If you want to change any items, or you feel like you are not purchasing the right color, etc. Then you click on place or submit the order. Then you see an order confirmation page and you get an order confirmation email. And then you get a shipment email if the store or the online store that you are making the purchase to, with a tracking information if they provide that information. And finally, you receive your order at your home. So let's talk about the catalog hierarchy. So what is a catalog hierarchy? So you enter the store, you look for men's clothing or women's clothing or shoes, that's a department. And then there are categories. So if you go to shoes department, there will be men's, women, or children's shoes, or you go to men's clothing, you would see shirts or trousers, etc., ties. You go to women's clothing, you will find tops, skirts, trousers, cosmetics, etc. Those are categories. Now, the most interesting part of online shopping or online catalog, designing an online catalog versus a brick and mortar store, is there are crossovers. So when you are clicking around, you can, and you want to find, say, shoes. So you can click on shoes, and when you go to a page that shows all the shoes, you could see categories: shoes for men, women, children, etc. So it's very important to understand, and most interesting part of online shopping experience is these crossovers. And depending upon what type of catalog you are designing, you could have or could not have departments. You could just have straight up category pages. And when you are discussing requirements or any technical discussion with stakeholders or client themselves, you could refer to, or they would refer to, these pages as product listing pages or PLPs or category pages, and also some facets and filters and sorts. These are the three most important components of these listing pages, where all the products in a given category that are listed. So what are these? So facets are the dimensions or special attributes that are available on a product. Say you are in a shoes department. So a shoes department would have color, size, man or woman, like type of shoes, material of shoes, whether it's a canvas or leather, etc. If there are any special attributes like seasonal or rain boots or snow boots, things like that, any of these attributes can become facets. And then each of those facets would have values. So say color. So color would be a facet, and the filters for uh, that facet could be red, black, brown, etc. So that is facets and filters to help the customer to choose or narrow down to the options that they are looking for. And then comes the sort. Sort could be something like they want to sort them by price, and they want to see the lowest priced shoes first, or they want to sort by the best sellers, which would potentially tie to which are the shoes that are actually selling really fast, and that data will come from somewhere else. More on that later. So those are the kind of sorts you can offer, and these sorts can change based on what type of business you are working with, or what the customer actually wants. And that's where we have to be the bridge between technology and marketing to and fulfill whatever merchants needs are that they think that the end user or customer experience requires. And again, whenever you are designing these pages or hierarchy, keep the crossovers in mind. They are very critical to success of online browsing experience. Products. So on category pages, you see those little thumbnails, and each thumbnail represents a product. A product is a shirt, a pair of sandals, a bottle of perfume, and they are typically referred to as a product details page or PDP or sale page or product information page. Um, Now, how the products can be presented to a customer. Let's take an example. You want to buy a bracelet, or you want to buy a piece of jewelry, or you want to buy a shirt. Now, what can be different? So when you want to buy jewelry, you if you are buying a ring, for example, a diamond ring, based on the carat weight of the diamond that you are purchasing, the price can vary. So in that scenario, the price will be actually based on the options that you are selecting. But that's not going to happen when you are purchasing a shirt, most likely not, because customers wouldn't want to spend less or more just because they are buying different sizes of shirts. So for those scenarios, the pricing will be at the product level. So what defines products and variants? So a product can be like just a flat product. It could be something like a mug or a plate or a pair of shoes. And it can have variants, which are referred to as dimensions, as I described before, that it can be a brown shoes of size 7.5. So a brown color and size 7.5 will actually narrow down to a SKU, which is abbreviation of stock keeping unit. That SKU is the unique identifier of the exact product that you are buying. So you could be looking at uh, leather shoes or a typical name of that product, and then narrow it down to the final option, and that's the variant of that product that you are purchasing. So that's the difference between product, which can also be referred to as like base product, sale group, or product group, or saleable product, or and then you purchase a variant, which can be called the same thing almost, but it would be just product, not a base product. A product or a base product can also be referred to as product group, that can have group of products identified by their dimensions. Prices are another interesting phenomenon of e-commerce. So typically, remember when you go to store, you see sometimes these yellow labels on top of the price, and you see was XYZ, or say was $100, now $60, and there is a 50% extra on the already reduced price. So ultimately, that gives you the actual price that you are paying. That's exactly transforms in online shopping experience, where you have standard or base price, or SRP, which is the suggested retail price for the merchandise that you are willing to purchase. Apply on top of it if there is any sale going on, so apply that discount. If you have a special membership card, apply more discount on that price, and the final price that you get is the price that you are paying. Now coming back to the member price, that is a identifier of different price groups. Now price groups can be varying anywhere from like the default price, like the standard price no matter what, and the member level price. So you can be a gold level member, you can be a silver level member, a platinum level member, and as and when any promotions are going on based on your membership level, you can get different discounts. So either that can be identified or configured at the discount level, or you can just introduce price groups that ties to a customer's membership level. There are also currency-based price, and that typically you would see when you are implementing a localized or globalized e-commerce business, where the wholesale price may remain US dollars regardless of the location of the user browsing the site, but the suggested retail price can be different based on the local currency. And it gets really interesting how the merchants wants to display those prices to customers, i.e. They want to show full price or the base price, as we refer to, maybe as strike through, and then show the actual price that you are paying because you are getting so many discounts. Some merchants just want to display this was the actual total price of your order, but because you have all these discounts, this is the final price that you are paying. So user experience can definitely vary based on the business. If you are I'll just share my recent experience. We were designing a jewelry website. So on a jewelry website, they find it cheap to show, or not so elegant to show strike-through prices. They just show you what you are paying. But if you are purchasing shirts or tops or shoes, like more common items, you are likely to see strike-through prices on the merchant's website. So it's very critical to understand the nature of business that you are designing to represent, and the challenges, or as I say, the fun that you get to represent in online shopping experience. Next comes the inventory. So you want to buy an item, which means you go to website and you are just able to click on add to cart. That means that item is in stock. So before I go any deeper in that, understand what are different inventory statuses that you will deal with. In stock, then there are some items that are available to pre-order. Apple is the best example. Every year they launch new iPhone. It's available to pre-order. So you pre-order that item, or that item is back ordered. All the pre-orders are fulfilled, and now the new Apple iPhone is on back order, which means that you can still order it because they are still planning to produce it, but it's back ordered, and now there is a second cycle of production going on. So you can still order, but you will not get it the day it launches. You may get it in 2 weeks time. Then there is out of stock, very obvious that this item is not available to purchase. And there is a stock alert, which means that when an item is out of stock, it can have two sub-statuses. Either it's out of stock temporarily and it will be available, in which case the merchants typically want to show a link stating that alert me when this item becomes available. And when you click on that link, you are asked to provide an email address or phone number, so they can notify you by text or email when that item becomes available. Another example of out of stock is discontinued, which means it's out of stock and it's gone forever. It's discontinued, that item is no longer available. So it's important to understand requirements around an out of stock, not available, out of stock temporary, and out of stock discontinued. Now comes cache inventory and real-time inventory. I will not go too much deep into that because that itself requires a whole presentation. But I'll tell you this. Ideally, what we recommend is when a customer is purchasing an item and they click add to cart, at that time they are most likely actually seeing cached inventory, which means that the inventory or the number of items that are available to you to purchase are based on a cache somewhere. But either when the user goes to the cart page or when the user clicks on submit order, you actually want to go to the backend system that actually holds all the inventory records and check against those records to see whether that item is really available or not. And based on that, you can then show on the order confirmation page or even before the order confirmation page that, sorry, the item that you were trying to purchase is no longer available. Now you are done browsing, you have added items to cart, and then you click a small icon that shows that looks like a basket, and the items that you have added in cart are displayed in rows, and those are referred to as cart lines or line items or items in your cart. And each of these items have quantity, and you can change the quantity here, you can change other dimensions here, and depending on how you are designing the user experience, you may update the item on the cart page itself, or there could be an edit link that takes you back to the back to the product details page of that item, or just display a model to you where you can edit that item while remaining on the shopping cart page. Again, it all depends on how user experience is required and designed for the given e-commerce website that you are working on. Then comes mini cart. So mini cart is exactly what you clicked to get to the shopping cart page. And mini cart typically shows number of items. Now, number of items is also a very interesting number. It could be the number of items, which means number of lines in your cart. So if you have 2 red shirts and say 3 trousers of the same style, it could still show because it could still show as 2 lines, or it could be line times quantity, so it could show as 5 items. And again, it depends what merchant wants to show as total of those items. Then comes discounts and coupons. So it's very important to understand what is a discount and what is a coupon in e-commerce world. So in e-commerce world, there is a promotion, and the promotion has all sorts of parameters. A promotion will have what the banner is supposed to look like, the design that goes around displaying or presenting that promotion to the end user. Then a promotion would have an associated discount, and that discount is basically like a type of discount, whether it's a free shipping discount or free shipping over or for orders over $99, or 20% discount if you have XYZ type of items in your cart. So those are the type of discounts. And then each discount may or may not have associated coupons. So coupon is the code that you ask the user to enter. And again, this coupon can be a private coupon, or targeted coupon as you call it. So that way, each user has a unique coupon that could tie to the same discount. So it is possible that 100 different user will be able to achieve that same discount, but they will all use a different unique coupon code assigned to them. Versus that could be a public coupon that you typically see in newspapers or you get in mail. There is a coupon code that you can use and purchase your merchandise. And based on the coupon that you add, you get the discount and you consume or you redeem the promotion. And then comes the sales tax. Now, sales tax, I just have one bullet because I'm just going to be very precise. Sales tax is a very interesting calculation that happens on orders. So sales tax gets calculated based on your location, based on the items that you are purchasing, and sometimes even based on the shipping method that you are selecting. And all that totals down to a number that gets added to the items that you are purchasing, giving you the order total. Calculating sales tax is mostly not on us. There is a third-party integration happening. And a couple of examples that I can remember on top of my head is Avalara and Vertex that I have worked with. Basically, you pass them the items or the order total that you have in your cart. So number of the total amount and your address. And based on these two pieces of information, these third-party vendors are able to then calculate the taxes and give you the number back, that what the tax is going to be for this particular order. Cart totals, as I was just describing, there is subtotal, which is the total of product price that you are purchasing, the actual price that you are purchasing for. Discount is any amount on top of the actual prices that you are paying on. Then there is a shipping and handling charges, and then there are taxes. Then you click on checkout. There are two types of checkouts, member checkout or guest checkout. What is the advantage of member checkout? If you provide your sign-in information and if you are a platinum level member, you automatically might see discounts applied to you. You can accrue reward points based on the items that you are purchasing. And most of us who have used Amazon are familiar with rewards points program. Plus, with member checkout, it is possible based on the design of the merchant, you would not need to provide shipping address, billing address, and at times, based on the PCI compliance, even the credit card information for the customer, you can persist. Versus guest checkout is an anonymous checkout. You don't care nor you know who the customer is or who the profile is. You don't create a profile for that customer. Once you choose one or the other, you get to the shipping page and you provide shipping address and billing address. Again, when you are implementing checkout, one question you should ask or think about whether it's going to be a single page checkout or multiple page checkout. In today's date and time, more the people are leaning towards more and more single page checkout because it gives a lesser chance for end user to leave checkout, which means there is more, it's more a revenue, or as they call it, the conversion is more guaranteed if you have single page checkout. You can have multiple items in your order, and depending on the commerce platform that you are working on or the extensions that you are willing to implement, you could be implementing multiple ship tos and multiple bill tos, that you want to use two different credit cards, and you want to ship this order in pieces to multiple places. Then we come to shipping options. It's very important to understand difference between shipping options and shipping methods. Shipping options can be you want to ship to store, you want to ship to home, you want to ship to a post box, but it's mostly ship to store or ship to home. And now we are also seeing curbside shipping. And what is the shipping method? So you want to have it shipped to store, but you want it to be shipped to the store overnight, or 2 or 3 days shipping is fine, or the standard ground shipping is fine. That's the shipping method. And the cost of shipping is associated with the shipping method that you select. So the total shipping cost would be, as they usually refer to shipping and handling, is the cost of shipping, and based on the item that you are purchasing, if there is a tax on the shipping cost, you will be paying that too. Then comes payment. Always, I would just mention this word. So when it comes to payment, always remember PCI compliance and make sure that at any given point, if the merchant is not PCI compliant, you are not saving the credit card information even for 1 second, because that could be violation. Just remember PCI compliance and payment. Just Google it and you will find tons of information. Same as shipping method, there are payment options and payment methods. So payment options will be a credit card, debit card, or a bank check, or an invoice payment, or a credit line payment. And payment method would be PayPal, Visa, MasterCard, etc. Invoice payments and credit line payments are typical for B2B purchases. Credit card, PayPal, bank check are mostly used for B2C purchases. You made your payment, and before I forget, even payments are implemented with third-party integrations. So every time during the presentation I mentioned third-party integrations, remember that you need to implement proof of concept for those integrations way sooner in your project lifecycle or in your development cycle. In simple term, we call it fail sooner, so that you don't have to fight it later. And it helps if there are any challenges in communicating or getting the results back from the third-party integration providers, you would know them way sooner in your development cycle, and you will be able to fight those challenges and resolve them way sooner in your cycle, rather than finding them out when you are almost near to the door. Then comes the review order page, where you get to review everything. You get to review your shipping address, the items that you are purchasing, if any options you want to change at this point, your payment information looks correct, your billing address is correct, and then you click on submit order. What happens when you click submit order button? Your payment is authorized. Now, I will discuss what the payment life cycle is, but your payment is authorized. That means your card will be charged. Not really. I'll get back to it later. Your order is submitted. Basically, somebody is notified in the back end or in office somewhere that an order has come in, and these are the items on this order, and this address this order needs to be shipped to. You and on the other side of the world get to an order confirmation page, and you get an order confirmation email. And what happens to your virtual cart? It's empty. Now what? So once you have submitted your order, as I mentioned, somebody somewhere in the world gets your order. They pick, pack, and ship your item. So they pick out the items that you have ordered. They pack them for you, and they ship them for you. And based on what post-order services the merchant provides, as an end user, you see order shipment email coming, or a text message. Many of us who have shopping experience with Amazon must know that we get emails that your order is ready to ship, or your order is shipped, and this is how you can track it. And when you go to tracking, you see where exactly your orders are. Now, as I mentioned before, payment authorization, and I have another word here, payment capture. So what happens? So when you submit an order, the money is not actually taken out from your credit card account, or from your bank account, or from your debit card. It's authorized. So at that point, the merchant puts a block of the amount of the order that you have placed on your credit card. Which means if you have $2,000 limit on your credit card, and if you bought something worth $500, that means for the rest of the billing cycle of your credit card, you have $1,500 spare to spend. If you try to spend $1,700 to purchase something else, your card is likely to be declined. Typically, merchants will capture the funds when your order is shipped or delivered, depends. So at that point, and a request to capture the funds is initiated from the merchant's back office, or the fulfillment system, as we call it. And that request is submitted, and that's called capture. That means that the money going from your account. That process is actually started. You also get a shipment email. You are able to track your order. Then your order is delivered at the same time, or within certain period of time. The payment is settled. Payment settlement, or payment capture, or payment authorization is something you wouldn't know, or I should say your end customer or end user will not know, or not necessarily need to know. These are like things that happen behind the scene that us technology people need to know. With that, I say thank you to all. I did present like a full 1 hour long session, same session that you can find on Sitecore Master class videos. And I'm open to any questions.